wanted to make some videos about how to play surf music on guitar. Actually, any instrument for that matter. It's a compositional tool, so if you're playing piano or organ or anything, this is applicable to. So I wanted to talk about some of the basic chord progressions that get used in surf music, and I'm going to start off with some of the most popular ones that are actually pretty simple. And surf guitar, surf music in general, is at least harmonically or chord-wise is not the most complex form of music, and it doesn't need to be. I mean, it's a very raw kind of rebellious kind of type of music, and it's in some ways it's a form of folk music, right? It's a lot about the performance aspect of it too, so it doesn't work in the same way that, say, the impressionistic period worked with composers like Debussy and stuff. So it's its own language, and like any language, it does have some specifics that make it work independently of, say, even blues or other pop music of the time, right? I want to dig into this first chord progression here. It's in A minor, and we're going to look at the top stave here where it goes A minor, G, F, E major. Okay, so we're in the key of A minor, and the A minor's relative major is C major. There's no sharps and flats in this key. And up until we get to the E major chord, we're dealing with chords that have no sharps and flats in them. So the A minor, the G major, the F major, these chords are all built from notes that exist in the A minor key signature. Right? So there we use the term diatonic for that. Okay. Now you're going to get to this E chord, and something is going to stick out here, and that is there is going to be a G sharp note inside the chord. Now, G sharp is not a pitch that exists in the key of C or A minor, so it seems a little suspect why it's there, right? Why is that note there? Well, it has a lot to do with tension and release. When going back to a one chord, we also sometimes call it the tonic, we like to set up some tension so that it feels, gratifying, because the tension gets released when we land on the tonic, the one chord again. In a major 5 chord, and sometimes a major 5 chord, it's a dominant chord, it has a flat 7th in it, creates wonderful tension to go back to the 1 chord. Now, naturally, in the major key signature, the 5 chord is dominant, but in a relative minor key signature, the 5 chord would naturally be minor. So if we actually built an E chord based around the notes that were in the A minor scale, we would have a G natural in it. But that doesn't sound resolved enough, right? It really is lackluster, and it feels a little deflated. Doesn't mean you should never use it, because sometimes that effect is really cool because you're not giving people what they expect, right? So you can play with people's expectations, but there are times when you do want to dig in and have the gratification of having that resolution. So in order to get this, in a minor key, we make the 5 chord, we make that a major chord, or sometimes we do a dominant chord. We achieve this by borrowing a chord or using a chord from the A harmonic minor scale. In the A harmonic minor scale is an A minor scale with the 7th note in its natural or major quality, right? So let's see, we have A, B, C, D, E, F. Oh, well, I'm in chord stacking mode here. I can take this out. A, B, C, D, E, F. Now here's the G. There's the 7th degree right before we go back to A. So this happens to be A harmonic minor, okay? Now, if I looked at A natural minor, it would be a little different. By one note, right? But that one note makes a difference when we're trying to build a 5 chord. A natural minor, there it is, right? So there it is, just that pesky 7th note makes all the difference in turning the 5 chord into a dominant or a major chord. Okay, this sets it up, and you're going to hear this when I play guitar and demonstrate it for you. And this second system here, I just moved it to a new key signature. I used E minor as our starting point, our tonic chord, and I went down root notes diatonically, right? Built the chords diatonically of what's in E minor. E minor's relative major key is G major, so we're dealing with one sharp in here, right? And oh, look at this. I messed this up, actually. This is a D major, and we should have an F sharp in here. There we go. Okay. Right, E minor, D major, C major, B7. I wrote it as a dominant chord now, right? But it still has our major third in the chord, and it does have a flat seventh in it. I don't have one written in here right now. Let's put it in. There we go. There's our flat seven. And I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. Okay, there we go. There is our B7 chord. There we go. Okay, so down to our B7 voicing. Okay, so this principle exists no matter what key signature you put in. It's the pull of making the 5-chord major or dominant to pull back to a 1 minor chord is really effective. Now, as I mentioned, in the major key signature, the 5-chord is naturally dominant, so we don't have to change anything. This is just something to do when we're dealing in minor key signatures, right? And so if I just even looked at this chord progression, we would be dealing with the a 1 chord here. We'd be dealing with a flat 7 chord that's major, and we'd be dealing with a flat 6 chord here, and then a 5 chord. Okay, now this has to do, and when I'm doing this, this is probably a discussion for another time period, but basically this is chord scale degrees. So in other words, G is, if we're thinking of A as a root note, not minor, but A. And maybe I shouldn't talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that. Let me get my guitar and discuss some of the voicings that we use for this. Okay. All right, so we use a lot of simple voicings for guitar, and a very popular voicing is actually using the bar chord. There's a very uniform sound about it, and there's a lot of parallel movement that happens. So basically we're moving the same arrangement of intervals, the same spacing, and we're moving them down. Right. So they maintain their shape relative to each other, and that creates a little bit more of a unified sound, which sounds a little different if I use open positions, which is also very nice and is used in surf music. They offer 2 colors of the sound of these chords descending, right? For now, I'm going to use this one because I like the uniform sound, right? Sometimes I like to play the E major chord like this. It just makes it easier to get back up to the 1, right? Because my fingers stay in this E or E7, and I can get back up to the A minor chord. Now this works really because the G sharp that we're talking about is a half step away from the root note of our tonic, our 1 chord. So it's called the leading tone, and it creates the most tension. You even hear it. It wants to push upwards. And the thing about the flat 7th, it tends to fall downwards, and it just doesn't have the same tension. Right? Okay. So this progression gets used a lot, right? Let's do it in D minor. I moved it up to root 5 bar chords. Play it as a dominant chord if I wanted to there, or E minor. Right? Even if you just hang on that 5 chord, there's party that's like, okay, release it, release it, release it, right? And then you're like, yes, okay, we're there, right? So there's a lot of ways you could play with this. I was kind of playing it in the same way that they use it in Walk Don't Run. You will also find this in other surf songs. It's kind of a common move in the genre, but you don't have to just do it one per bar, right? That's one of the progressions from one of my songs, a project I have called Mark Marshall's Future Relics, which is like a vintage surf and 50s, 60s sci-fi inspired gig band project that I have. So that's really it. So I think just practice some descending chord progressions that are in minor and diatonic, but get used to the idea of when you have a 5 chord that leads back to 1, try thinking of using that as a major chord or a dominant chord, particularly when you're in a minor key signature. If you're digging this, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, leave some comments. It all helps the algorithm and will help my channel grow, and I'd greatly appreciate that. You could also find me at anatomyoftone.com, where I have a lot of reviews on pedals, including like surf guitar pedals, spring reverbs, tremolos, and fuzz pedals, and a lot of the gear that was used in surf music. So you can find me there as well. Till next time.